James Arness was 6 tall. He was pretty much one of the biggest men who had ever been in a movie. This man was much taller than everyone else on the Gunsmoke set, still. Many of his cast members often said that he was a really gentle giant. Picture how shocked James's fans were when stories spread that he wasn't getting along with someone close to him. Let's watch this movie to see how James became famous and how true this hate rumor was. On May 26, 1923. In Minneapolis, Minnesota, Rolf Cirkler Arness, a traveling medical supplier, and Ruth Dussler Arness, a journalist of German descent, had a son named James Arness. James was of Norwegian origin. At first, the family name was Arness. In 1887, James' grandpa Peter Arness moved to the United States from Norway. He changed his name to Arness after coming here. When James was born, his name was James King Arness. There was a Methodist background to him. This helped shape his views, personality, and character. He is the older of 2 boys. His younger brother, Peter Graves, was also an actor and used the last name of their mother as his stage name. James went to 3 Minneapolis schools. He began at John Burroughs Elementary School, then went to Washburn High School, and finally switched to West High School, where he finished in 1942. James always missed school in high school because he had to work part-time as a courier for a gold wholesaler. James worked at the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad Freight Yard in Minneapolis, where he often packed and unpacked trains. To make ends meet, he also did some cutting in Pierce, Idaho. Even though both of his parents worked, he had to help bring in money for the family. In the early 1940s, his parents split up, ending what seemed like a happy family. The reason for the split is not known. Little James was crushed by this news. To be a fighting Navy pilot was James's dream job, but he thought his bad eyesight and height would stop him. To be a pilot, you had to be at least 6 feet 2 inches tall. He was 7 feet tall. He was also about 235 pounds, and his body measures were 48 inches around the chest, 36 inches around the hips, and 26 inches around the feet. So he never tried to make his dream come true when he was young. Anyway, since he couldn't make his dreams come true, he chose to go to college. His first year at Beloit College was the same year he graduated from high school. But it looked like the military saw his promise through some kind of cosmic link because he was called up into the U.S. Army in 1943, only a semester after starting a new school where he only went to lectures. In March of that year, he went right to Fort Snelling in Hennepin County, Minnesota. He began training at Camp Wheeler in Georgia. Almost a year later, for the invasion of Anzio, he went to North Africa, especially Casablanca. The Battle of Anzio happened during the Second World War. The 2nd Platoon of E Company, 2nd Battalion, 7th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division sent James to land on Anzio Beachhead on January 22, 1944. He was a rifleman. This fort was where most government leaders met and worked. As expected, James, a very tall guy, was the first person to get off the landing craft and check the water level. It was up to his waist. Soon, the new recruits were put right into the fight, and they would be fighting for months to come. One night on February 1, 1944, there was no moon. James was alarmed by the sound of screams as he crept through a yard toward the enemy lines. Before he could do anything, a fight broke out and he was caught. He was hit several times by machine gun fire, which broke his lower leg. A concussion bomb was thrown nearby as the person was trying to deal with the terrible pain. After James was thrown off the ground, he hit something hard. The battle went on, and no one cared if James was dead or living because they were lost. In the end, the enemy men were beaten. As the fight went on, though, James was badly hurt. He had been hit with a German machine gun several times in the right leg. And it was so bad that he had to be flown from Italy to the U.S. To get help, when he got to the U.S., he was taken to the 91st General Hospital in Clinton, Iowa. He wouldn't be fully better for a while. It took 5 months to finish the Anzio War, which ended after several disagreements, left behind a lot of deaths and damage. James was one of the lucky ones. He was honorably released from the Army on January 29, 1945, after having several surgeries. He had the American Campaign Medal, the European African Middle Eastern Campaign Medal with 3 bronze battle stars and an arrowhead device, the World War II Victory Medal, and the Combat Infantryman Badge with the stars and stripes. He didn't fully heal, and he had constant leg pain that would sometimes get very bad. His younger brother Peter came to see him in the hospital and told him he should apply to the University of Minnesota for a radio course. James did what his brother told him to do. After getting out of the hospital, he took a radio course at the University of Minnesota. Pretty soon, his teacher told him about a job as a radio voice at a station in Minneapolis. He was having a great time as a radio host, but a friend suggested that he go to Hollywood and work as an extra in movies, which he did. James got to Hollywood by hitchhiking with only a $1.100 bill in his pocket. James quickly signed up for the Bliss Hayden Theater School. He learned from actor Harry Hayden while he was there. Leon Lance, an agent, saw him one day while he was practicing for a show. Don't forget that James was 6 feet 7 inches tall and had light brown eyes and golden hair. He was going to stand out for sure. No one is sure if Lance saw promise in him because of how good an actor he was or because of how tall he was. We do know that he cast James as Peter Young, Loretta Young's brother, in the 1947 movie Farmer's Daughter. Back in this classic, H.C. Potter, who was in charge of the movie, told James to get rid of the U in his last name. James saw the sense in this right away, so he dropped the U from his name and is now known as James Arness. This was the second time that his grandfather's name had been changed, but it worked out well for his job, and we don't know of any bad things about using his old name. James was just rolling with the waves at this point. He lived on the beach at Onufray and surfed all the time. But something was going to happen that would make his life different. Soon after The Farmer's Daughter came out, he got fan mail for the first time in his life. He was blown away by this act of kindness, which made him want to take his acting job much more seriously. His hard work started to pay off. He was hired in Candida at the Pasadena Community Playhouse, which is where he met Virginia Chapman, who would become his leading lady and marry him in 1948. This turned out to be a great choice for him, both personally and professionally. It made him want to study acting and work harder at his job. James didn't really do much to learn how to act in the first place, which isn't his fault. No matter how many parts he played in high school, he had never been interested in acting. He just never had high hopes for becoming an actor. He also thought that the parts he had been given so far were just a good break. It didn't matter what he thought, though. He started getting other small parts to play, and soon this was happening all the time. Of course, the fact that he was so big helped him get work, especially as bad guys. 1951's The Thing from Another World, in which he played a killer alien, was one of his most famous roles. He was also in other movies. At some point, someone must have seen James and thought he could do more than just play bad guys in movies. So one day he was cast as a Greek warrior. It was while he was in that part that agent Charles K. Feldman, who also worked for John Wayne, saw him, but John Wayne was already a huge star at that point. Feldman presented James to Wayne. Wayne liked James for some reason, maybe because of the way he was both a unique person and a huge man. Anyway, Wayne signed James to a personal deal before anyone could say jack for a few years. He had the chance to work as an actor under Wayne in a lot of different parts. It was natural for James to pair Wayne up with someone to learn from. And this would help James a lot, not only to get better at playing, but also to get bigger roles. In 1955, Wayne suggested him for the lead part of Matt Dillon on the TV show Gunsmoke, which would be the most important job of his career. A rumor going around Hollywood said that Wayne was first given the part but turned it down. This proved that the rumor was false. That's not true, though. James turned down the part because he thought that starting a TV show would take his career off the path of growth that he was trying to achieve. Lucky for him, his friend and guide, who wanted him to do well, wouldn't let him miss such a great chance. It is said that Wayne told Jim, "Go ahead and take a picture of you would be too big. Guy friends of mine and I don't want a big jerk like you standing over us. Make your name known in TV." He finally agreed and took the part. In fact, we should praise how hard he worked. So dark that he had to dye his normally blonde hair to fit the part. To make the scene seem more real, he had to learn how to shoot too. Wayne showed up in the beginning of the pilot episode of Gunsmoke in 1955 to introduce James as Matt Dillon, the show's main character. However, he wasn't going to be a big part of the show itself. Kansas Dodge City was the setting for the show. It was mostly about Marshal Matt Dillon's struggles to keep the peace on the dangerous wilderness. This story, which attracted viewers around the world, was very interesting. Dillon was a good police officer, and his strange group of friends were likable characters who made the show even more fun to watch. Archo Halla was one of the people James would work with. Arvo was one of the first players to appear in the show's beginning. Here, Dillon was going to have a fight with what was called a generic bad guy who stood for all the bad guys he has to deal with over the course of the show. The job of teaching James how to shoot had been given to Arvo. The part of Dillon was played by James magnificently. People all over the country soon couldn't get enough of him. He had won over the American people. In its very first season, Gunsmoke became a hit with Americans. This was funny because this TV show ran for 20 seasons, from 1955 to 1975, and until 2008, it was still the longest-running drama show in the history of US TV. Still, it's still one of the longest-running shows ever. Gunsmoke really did make James and his co-stars, like Milburn Stone, Amanda Blake, Burt Reynolds, Dennis Weaver, Ken Curtis, and Buck Taylor, very well known. He took Craig Arness in as his own while he was married to Virginia Chapman. Craig Arness started the stock photography agency Westlight and used to work for National Geographic as a photographer. They had a son and a daughter together too. Rolf Arness was his son. He was born on February 18, 1952. Jenny Lee Arness was his sister. She was born on May 23, 1950. After he and Virginia Chapman got divorced in 1963, James fought for and got formal custody of his kids. He gave the Brandeis Institute his 400-acre ranch in northern Los Angeles County in 1968. Rolf later became famous when he won the World Surfing title in 1970. Jenny Lee died too soon at the age of 25 from taking too much cocaine. We could say she killed herself in 1975. After 2 years, James's heart was broken again by something bad that happened. Virginia, his ex-wife, was said to have died of an accidental drug overdose in 1977. They were divorced for 4 years before he met Thordis Brand. They were friends for 6 years, but then they broke up. He met and married Janet Surtees in 1978. James was having a great time on the Gunsmoke set. A study says that the close relationships between Gunsmoke cast members show that strong personal relationships have a hugely positive effect on the success of a franchise. There were possibilities because they were known for making the set a fun place to work. James was a really nice person. In fact, his Gunsmoke stunt double Ben Bates said that James laughed all the way up to the top of his head, even though his Gunsmoke role was very serious. He laughed so hard that shooting had to be stopped sometimes because he couldn't hold back his laughter. A new player on Gunsmoke's Buck Taylor thought so much of James that he named his second son after James' character Matt. This shows how highly James was thought of on the show. Someone else reason James was admired was likely that he was very shy and sensitive. He was naturally that way, so it was hard for him to get along with the reporters. It is said that he didn't like the attention from the media so much that he wouldn't let reporters on the Gunsmoke set. James was a very simple person who loved writing, sailing, surfing, and connecting with real people more than anything else. He was called the Greta Garbo of Dodge City because of this. He was lucky to meet people on set who shared his values. That's why the players and people who weren't actors were like a big family. That's one reason the show lasted so long. In all 20 seasons of Gunsmoke, the show's main character was in every single one of them. For 13 seasons, it was in the top 10 in the ratings, and for 4 seasons in a row, it was number 1. That record was tied in 2010 by the last season of Law Order, and again in 2018 by season 20 of Law Order Special Victims Unit. During the time that the show was on, James got raises every year and more artistic control over the show through his earnings and residuals. At an interesting point in the show's story, his own company was created by his own company. James was the only one of the original 4 main players who kept working on Gunsmoke after the show ended in 1975. As soon as the show ended, James wished his life were easier. His job with Gunsmoke kept him close to Hollywood for almost 20 years, even though he really wanted to travel. Without a doubt, now was the time to follow his youth dream of traveling. But James was not meant to have this. Not yet, anyway. The movie business wanted him back. He was in the Mac-a-Hand in 1976, which led to the 6-hour movie. The next year, he did How the West Was Won, which ran for 1 season and once a week until 1978. He was also in Wayne's fast-paced Western movie Gun the Man Down and The Island in the Sky and The Sea Chase. In some more movies with Wayne, he played Wayne's part as Tom Dunson in a 1988 TV remake of Wayne's 1948 classic Red River. James went on to make a lot more movies than he thought he would, or more accurately, didn't think he would. It was surprising how talented he was for someone who wasn't taking acting seriously. People who worked with him in movies were very thankful for it. The awards he has won show how good he is. These Emmy Awards were put forward for him. The 1957 award for Best Recurring Performance by an Actor in a Drama Series, the 1958 award for Best Recurring Performance by an Actor in a Lead Role in a Drama or Comedy Series. 1959 Best Actor in a Leading Role, Continuing Character in a Dramatic Series. His work on TV was so important that he got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame at 1751 Vine Street. He was made a member of the Western Performers Hall of Fame at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum in Oklahoma City in 1981. In 2006, James was added to the Santa Clarita Walk of Western Stars. People magazine made a list of the top 25 TV stars of all time in 1988, the 50th anniversary of TV in the United States. James came in at number 6. That same year, TV Guide named him the 20th best star of all time. In his book, which came out in September 2001, James said, "Because I'm not getting any younger, an honorary U.S. Marshal was given to him because of the unique things he did to help the U.S. Marshal Service's image and customs." The mayor, the 15 members of the city council, and the city attorney gave him a resolution at Los Angeles City Hall on February 6, 2005, that praised his work as an actor and his 60 years of living in Los Angeles. The beautiful finish showed a U.S. Marshal's badge and was a tribute to his role as Matt Dillon on Gunsmoke 1955, which was the longest-running drama show on TV, running for more than 20 years. It also remembered how brave he was in WWII and thanked him for giving us one of the most telling and accurate pictures ever made of the brave tall man in the saddle searching for justice and peace in a western town. Even James said it was the best day of his life, and he put the resolution in a very visible place in his home right away. No one was hurt when James died in his Brentwood home in Los Angeles on June 3, 2011, at the age of 88. His body was buried in the Jasmine Terrace, which is part of the Great Mausoleum, in the Abiding Hope Alcove, which is a refuge at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. His wife, son, 6 grandkids, and great-grandchildren all lived on after him. When you look at this famous actor's life, it's clear that he knew the value of human connection, since it played a huge part in getting him to important points in his life and ultimately killing him. Now that we've talked about the hate myth, let's start with the people who worked with him the most. From what we've heard, most of the actors on Gunsmoke liked working with each other and got along fine. It's true that there were disagreements and tensions on set, but they were quickly resolved. Another time, no one person could be blamed for starting a fight. It was pretty much impossible because Gunsmoke cast members liked to hang out with each other outside of shooting. The chemistry they had on screen worked in real life. It would not have been possible for 20 seasons and 635 shows to come out over 20 years if these problems were not quickly dealt with and solved peacefully. It became so close between these guys that many people on set stayed close friends even after the show quit. Some people said that James didn't like his brother Peter Graves because he changed his name or moved back in with his family too soon. All of those reasons, though, are mostly not true. James got up early and left. Peter changed his name because he wanted to be successful without assistance from his older brother. James fully understood this because he too had to change his name to fit the needs of the time. In 1955, James played the lead role in an episode of Gunsmoke that Peter directed. That same year, James was nominated for an Emmy. James didn't seem to hate anyone, and the gentle giant hated nothing more than being forced to play a role in other people's choices. As he said, "I don't say anything because I'm not in charge. I don't believe I have the power to affect other people." I don't know, maybe that being a quitter.